Welcome back to a new episode of your favorite podcast, Book Thoughts. Today, we're diving deep into You Become What You Think, Master Your Mind, Master Your Life by Shubham Kumar. It's a book that, promises a treasure trove of wisdom gleaned from hundreds of self-help and philosophy books.
Yeah, it's not just like a summary though. Kumar has this knack for weaving together all these seemingly disparate ideas into a cohesive framework. He calls it a curated collection of actionable insights, and I think it really does live up to that.
Yeah, I love that phrase, actionable insights, because so many self-help books can feel a bit fluffy. But this one really seems to get down to brass tacks. One of the first things that jumped out at me was that concept of the two darts of pain.
Oh, yeah, that's a powerful analogy. It is, isn't it? The idea that that first dart is like that unavoidable pain of life, the things that we can't control, like illness, loss, disappointment. But the second dart, that's the one we inflict on ourselves through our reactions or rumination or resistance.
It's so true. I mean, I catch myself throwing those second darts all the time. But the book doesn't just, point out the problem. It offers solutions. It delves into stoicism as a way to kind of navigate those unavoidable darts.
What's fascinating about Stoicism is that it's not about suppressing emotions or becoming some kind of emotionless robot. It's about recognizing what we can and cannot control and focusing our energy on those things that we can actually influence, like our thoughts and our actions.
That resonates with me because I think so often I get caught up in worrying about things that are completely outside of my control. And the book even gives us some practical exercises for, practicing stoicism, right? Like that analogy about composure.
Yes, it's not about ignoring our emotions, but about learning to observe them without letting them dictate our behavior. Kumar compares it to getting accepted into your dream school, right? You're ecstatic, but you don't just jump up and down in the middle of class. You acknowledge the feeling, but you choose how to respond to it.
That makes so much sense. It's like having a space between the stimulus and the reaction. That moment to choose a, more skillful response. But let's be honest, putting this into practice can be tough. The book acknowledges that willpower is a limited resource, right?
Right. Especially when it comes to breaking bad habits.
Absolutely. Instead of just relying solely on willpower, which can be easily depleted, the book draws on James Clear's atomic habits and emphasizes that importance of environmental design. It's about making good habits easy and enjoyable and bad habits difficult and unsatisfying.
Oh, so it's less about white-knuckling our way to change and more about setting ourselves up for success. Yeah, I like that. It reminds me of that saying, if you want to change your life, change your environment.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment that supports the person you want to become, rather than constantly battling against yourself.
Now, the book also dives into this concept of happiness, but not in the way you might expect. It challenges the idea of happiness as some kind of destination that we reach, and it debunks the myth of chasing external validation. Right. Kumar distinguishes between that fleeting pleasure that's derived from external sources and lasting enjoyment that's cultivated from within. He introduces this fascinating concept called flow, a state of deep focus and engagement where you kind of lose track of time because the challenge perfectly matches your skill level. Think of a musician completely absorbed in their music or an athlete in the zone.
So enjoyment isn't about chasing those fleeting highs, but finding those activities that give us a sense of meaning and purpose.
Precisely. It's about aligning our actions with our values and finding that sweet spot where our skills meet a worthy challenge. And it's not just about work or hobbies. This concept applies to relationships too. The book emphasizes mindful love and its four components: joy, equanimity, compassion, and loving kindness.
That sounds beautiful, but what does mindful love actually look like in practice? Does the book offer any concrete examples?
Well, one thing that stood out to me was the emphasis on self-connection as a prerequisite for genuine connection with others. It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. We need to cultivate our own inner resources, our own sense of peace and well-being in order to show up fully in our relationships.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually cultivate that self-connection? Does the book offer any practical techniques?
Absolutely. It suggests practices like mindful walking or breathing exercises to cultivate presence and awareness both of ourselves and of others.
It's like we're training our minds to be more present, more attuned, and more responsive rather than reactive.
You've got it. And that ability to be present, to respond skillfully rather than just react impulsively, ties back to that Stoic idea of accepting what is and focusing on what we can control.
I'm seeing so many connections here. All these different concepts are kind of weaving together into this tapestry of wisdom. Before we move on to the next section, anything else about relationships that really stood out to you?
I think one of the most powerful takeaways is this idea that our relationships mirror ourselves. If we're constantly attracting unhealthy relationships, it might be a sign that we need to work on, our own self-love and boundaries. The book has some thought-provoking insights on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's so easy to blame external factors, but often the real work begins within. Now, let's dive into another crucial area that the book explores: mental health. It acknowledges that low moods are a normal part of life, but can sometimes lead to this downward spiral.
Right. And Kumar points out how those low moods can make us crave comfort, leading us to choices that ultimately keep us feeling down. It's like reaching for that extra slice of cake when you're already feeling bad about your diet. It provides a temporary boost, but it ultimately reinforces those negative feelings.
So how do we break free from that cycle?
Right.
What does the book suggest?
It emphasizes the importance of self-compassion. Instead of beating ourselves up for feeling down, we can acknowledge those emotions without letting them control us. It also talks about the power of reframing our problems.
Reframe it. What does that look like in practice?
Okay, let's say you're stressed about a deadline at work. Instead of seeing it as a threat, try reframing it as a challenge, an opportunity to prove your skills. That subtle shift in perspective can change your whole emotional response.
That's a great example. It's like choosing to see the glass as half full instead of half empty. But I imagine that takes practice. It's not always easy to reframe negative thoughts.
You're absolutely right. It takes practice, but like any skill, the more we do it, the easier it becomes. And the book offers some really practical exercises for cultivating self-compassion and reframing those negative thoughts.
I love how this book is full of actionable advice. It's not just about understanding these concepts, it's about putting them into practice.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so empowering. It gives us the tools to take control of our mental well-being rather than feeling like we're at the mercy of our emotions.
Now, the book also delves into human psychology in a really fascinating way. It explores how our brains work and, why we sometimes make irrational decisions.
One of the key insights from this section is this idea that we often favor feeling right over being right. We cling to our beliefs even when evidence contradicts them because it's just easier than admitting that we were wrong.
Oh, that's so true. I've definitely been guilty of that myself.
Yeah.
But how do we combat that tendency? How do we become more open to being wrong?
The book suggests cultivating what Adam Grant calls confident humility. It's about being secure enough in yourself to admit when you don't know something and being willing to learn from others.
Oh, that's a great concept. It's about recognizing that we all have blind spots and that being wrong is not a sign of weakness, but an opportunity for growth.
Exactly. And the book goes on to explore Daniel Kahneman's work on cognitive biases and the two systems of thinking. System 1, that fast, intuitive one, and System 2, the slow, deliberate one. Understanding these systems can help us make more rational choices, even when our gut instincts are leading us astray.
This is fascinating stuff. Can you give me an example of how these two systems play out in real life?
Imagine you're at the grocery store and you see a sale on your favorite cereal. System 1 might immediately, jump at the deal thinking this is a bargain, but System 2 might kick in and ask, do I really need more cereal right now? Will this just end up going stale in my pantry?
Ah, so System 1 is impulsive while System 2 is more thoughtful and deliberate.
Exactly. And the key is to learn when to trust our gut and when to slow down and engage our more rational minds. The book provides some really practical strategies for doing this.
This is all so insightful. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into You Become What You Think, from the power of our thoughts to the importance of habits, relationships, mental health, and even the workings of our own minds.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore in this treasure trove of wisdom. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the practical applications of these concepts.
I can't wait. This book is like a toolbox for personal growth, and I'm excited to keep unpacking all the gems that it contains.
One thing that really struck me about the book was how it reframes our relationship with money.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that. I'm always fascinated by different perspectives on, finances.
Well, it challenges that, common notion that more stuff equals more happiness. It draws on Morgan Housel's work, arguing that money's real value lies in its ability to, give us control over our time.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. So instead of chasing material possessions, we should be focusing on using money to buy, freedom and flexibility.
Exactly. That might mean like working fewer hours or starting a passion project or simply having more time to spend with loved ones. It's about aligning our spending with our values, not just, mindlessly consuming.
I love that. It's about being intentional with our resources, both,
Mhm.
time and money. But the book doesn't stop there. It also delves into the psychology of investing, right?
You notice that too. Yeah, it emphasizes understanding the difference between assets and liabilities, thinking long term, and recognizing the role of emotions in our financial decisions. Things like fear and greed.
It seems like a recurring theme in the book is this idea of taking ownership and making conscious choices. Whether it's our thoughts, our habits, our relationships, or our finances, it all comes back to that core principle.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. The book is essentially a guide to, becoming the architect of your own life, both internally and externally. It's about recognizing the power we have to shape our reality, even when things feel beyond our control.
That's such an empowering message. And it does this by, like, drawing wisdom from so many different
Hmm.
sources, right? It's not just one philosophy or approach. It's like a buffet of wisdom.
Exactly. We see stoicism, mindfulness, positive psychology, even behavioral economics, all woven together. It's like Kumar has distilled the best insights from all these different fields and created this practical roadmap for personal growth.
One section that really resonated with me was the one on overcoming fear and embracing change. It reminded me of Spencer Johnson's Who Moved My Cheese, that classic parable about the mice and the little people.
Oh, I love that analogy. Yeah, it perfectly illustrates how our attitudes towards change can either help or hinder us. The mice, Sniff and Scurry, they just simply adapt to the new cheese situation, while the little people, Hem and Haw, get stuck in their fear and resistance.
So the lesson is to be more like the mice, to stay curious, adaptable, and open to new possibilities.
Precisely. The book encourages us to embrace change as an inevitable part of life and to view it as an opportunity for growth rather than something to be feared.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. From stoicism to mindful love to embracing change. Seems like a lot of the book's wisdom boils down to letting go of control, accepting what is, and focusing on what we can influence.
That's a brilliant observation. You've really captured the essence of the book's message. It's not about denying our emotions or pretending that everything is rosy. It's about learning to navigate the ups and downs of life with grace and resilience.
Okay. Now, another section I found particularly fascinating was the one on human psychology, especially that part about how we often prioritize feeling right over actually being right.
Oh yeah, that's such a common human tendency. The book explores how our need for consistency and our aversion to cognitive dissonance can lead us to cling to our beliefs even when evidence contradicts them.
It's like we'd rather hold on to a comfortable lie
Yeah.
than face an uncomfortable truth.
Exactly. And it's not just about, facts and opinions. It can also show up in our relationships. We might avoid difficult conversations or make excuses for someone's behavior because it's just easier than acknowledging the problem.
So how do we break free from this trap? How do we become more open to being wrong?
The book suggests cultivating what's called intellectual humility. It's about being willing to admit when we're wrong, to change our minds, and to constantly, seek out new information. It's about being more interested in truth than in being right.
Oh, that's a powerful concept, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with information from all sides.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in our own echo chambers and filter out anything that challenges our beliefs.
You're absolutely right. That's why intellectual humility is so crucial. It allows us to stay open to new perspectives, to learn from our mistakes and to grow as individuals.
And it ties back to that idea of self-awareness, being able to, recognize our own biases and limitations.
Exactly. The more we understand ourselves, the better equipped we are to navigate the complexities of life and make choices that are aligned with our values.
Now, before we move on, I wanted to touch on another aspect of human psychology that the book explores. Robert Cialdini's Principles of Persuasion.
Ah, yes, the psychological shortcuts that influence our decision-making. Things like reciprocity, scarcity, social proof, authority, liking, and consistency.
Wow, they sound incredibly powerful. Can you give me an example of one of them in action?
Think of those limited time offers you see everywhere. Only 24 hours left to get this amazing deal. That's the scarcity principle at play. By creating a sense of urgency and limited availability, they're tapping into our fear of missing out.
Ah, that's why those tactics are so effective. But being aware of these principles can help us make more conscious choices, right?
Absolutely. By understanding how these principles work, we can recognize when they're being used on us and make, more informed decisions. It's like having a secret decoder ring for marketing and persuasion.
Okay, let's shift gears now to a section that might be a bit heavier, but it's, incredibly important.
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl's work on finding meaning in suffering.
This is where the book gets really profound. Frankl's message, drawn from his experiences in Nazi concentration camps, is that even in the darkest of times, we always have the freedom to choose our attitude.
Hmm. So even when it feels like, like everything has been taken from us, we still have the power to choose how we respond.
Exactly. Frankl observed that the prisoners who found meaning, even in the midst of, unimaginable suffering, were the ones who were most likely to survive. It wasn't about denying the pain or pretending that, that everything was okay. It was about finding something to hold on to, something to live for.
So meaning isn't something that's given to us. It's something we create, even in the face of adversity.
Precisely. And it's not about finding some grand universal purpose. It can be as simple as finding beauty in nature, connecting with loved ones, or contributing to something larger than yourself.
That's a really powerful message. It reminds me of that quote from Nietzsche. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow.
Oh, I love that quote. It perfectly encapsulates Frankl's philosophy. He believed that our primary drive in life is not pleasure or power, but the search for meaning. And that meaning is, unique and specific to each individual.
It's so inspiring. It's a reminder that even when life throws us curveballs, we always have the power to choose our response and to find meaning in the midst of suffering.
And it ties back to that, that stoic idea of accepting what we cannot change. Frankl observed that the prisoners who resisted their reality, who clung to the hope that, things would go back to the way they were often the first to give up.
It's like they were adding an extra layer of suffering onto an already, unbearable situation.
Exactly. It was the ones who accepted their situation, however horrific, and focused on finding meaning in the present moment, who found the strength to endure.
So it's about finding a different kind of hope. A hope rooted in, purpose and meaning, not in denial or wishful thinking.
You've got it. And that's the beauty of Frankl's work. It shows us that even in the darkest of times, we have the power to choose our attitude, to find meaning, and to live a life filled with purpose.
It's such a powerful message, and it, ties in beautifully with the overall theme of the book. You become what you think is not just about positive thinking. It's about taking ownership of our lives, both internally and externally,
Yeah.
and choosing to create a reality that aligns with our values and our, and our deepest sense of purpose.
I couldn't agree more. It's about recognizing that we are not passive bystanders in our own lives. We are active creators, and we have the power to shape our destiny. One thought, one choice, one action at a time.
Okay. Now, before we wrap up part 2 of this deep dive, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the, some of the key takeaways you've gleaned from this book so far?
Well, one thing that has really resonated with me is the importance of self-awareness.
Yeah.
It's the foundation for all personal growth, whether we're talking about managing our emotions, building better habits, or making sound financial decisions. It all starts with understanding ourselves,
Mm.
our strengths, our weaknesses, our values, and our motivations.
Mm. That makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
It's like having a blueprint for our own lives.
Exactly. And once we have that blueprint, we can start to make, intentional choices that align with who we want to be and what we want to achieve.
Another takeaway that's really stuck with me is this idea that happiness is not a destination, but a journey. It's not about achieving some external goal or acquiring more possessions. It's about cultivating inner peace, contentment, and a sense of meaning and purpose.
I completely agree. The book does a great job of debunking the myth of happiness as some kind of, external reward that we need to chase. It's about finding joy in the present moment, appreciating what we have, and focusing on what truly matters.
And that ties in with the concept of mindful love, right? It's not about finding the perfect partner or, having a fairy tale romance. It's about cultivating a deep connection with ourselves and others based on compassion, kindness, and acceptance.
Yes. And it's about being present in our relationships, both, with ourselves and with others. It's about listening deeply, communicating honestly, and showing up authentically.
This book is like a treasure chest of wisdom, and we've only just scratched the surface. I'm excited to continue our exploration in part 3, where we'll delve into even more practical applications of these concepts and explore how we can integrate this wisdom into our daily lives. Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive into You Become What You Think. from like the power of our thoughts to the importance of habits, relationships, mental health, and even like the intricacies of human psychology. It's been like an incredible journey.
It has, and we've only just begun to uncover the wealth of wisdom contained in this book. It's like a springboard for further exploration, a starting point for lifelong journey of personal growth.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Because it's not about reaching some like final destination. It's about continually like evolving and expanding our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly. And one of the tools that the book provides for this, this ongoing journey is a deeper understanding of how our minds work. We touched on it briefly before, but I think it's worth revisiting. Those two systems of thinking, System 1 and System 2.
Yeah. Please, I'm fascinated by this concept, and I think our listeners would be too. Can you just remind us how those two systems operate?
Absolutely. As Daniel Kahneman explains in Thinking Fast and Slow, System 1 is our fast, intuitive, emotional system. It's the one that jumps to conclusions, makes snap judgments, and relies on, heuristics or mental shortcuts.
So it's like our autopilot, the system that helps us navigate everyday life without having to overthink every decision.
Precisely. It's incredibly efficient, but also prone to biases and errors because it's not always grounded in logic or careful consideration.
Okay. And System 2, that's our slower, more deliberate and rational system. Right?
You got it. System 2 is the one that engages in critical thinking, weighs evidence, analyzes information, and considers different perspectives.
It's like our inner Sherlock Holmes, the system that helps us solve complex problems and make more informed decisions.
Yeah, I like that.
So how do these two systems, how do they play out in our daily lives? Can you give me a concrete example?
Sure. Let's say you're scrolling through social media and you see a post about a political issue that triggers a strong emotional reaction in you. System 1 might immediately jump to conclusions, confirming your existing beliefs, and even leading you to share the post without really thinking about it.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that. It's so easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment and react impulsively, especially, online.
Exactly. But if you engage System 2, you might take a step back, read the article more critically, consider, different perspectives, and maybe even do some additional research before forming an opinion or sharing it with others.
So it's about being aware of which system is in control and learning when to slow down and engage our more rational minds.
Precisely. And that ties in with so much of what we've been discussing in this deep dive, from mindfulness to intellectual humility to confident humility. It's about recognizing the biases that can cloud our judgment and making a conscious effort to think more critically.
I'm starting to see how all these different concepts from the book are interconnected and how they can work together to help us live more fulfilling lives.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about this book. It's not just a collection of, random self-help tips. It's a comprehensive framework for understanding ourselves and the world around us.
And it doesn't shy away from the complexities of life either.
Yeah.
It acknowledges that we don't always have all the answers and that it's okay to be wrong, to change our minds, and to, embrace the gray areas.
Yes. The book encourages us to move beyond black and white thinking and to embrace, nuance, ambiguity, and the possibility of multiple perspectives.
That's so important, especially in today's world where everything seems so polarized and divisive.
I couldn't agree more. And it's not just about, tolerance or political correctness. It's about recognizing that our own perspective is limited and that there's always more to learn and understand.
Speaking of learning and understanding, one of the key takeaways, for me from this book has been the power of curiosity. Instead of clinging to our existing beliefs, we can approach life with a sense of wonder and a willingness to explore new ideas.
That's a beautiful insight. And it ties back to that concept of intellectual humility, being open to the possibility that we might be wrong and that there's always something new to discover.
And it's not just about intellectual growth either, right? Curiosity can enrich our lives in countless ways, from trying new hobbies to traveling to different places to simply, striking up conversations with people we wouldn't normally talk to.
I love that. It's about expanding our horizons, both intellectually and experientially, and approaching life with a sense of openness and adventure.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive into You Become What You Think, I wanted to ask you, What are some of the most practical takeaways you've gleaned from this book that our listeners can apply to their own lives?
Well, one of the most practical and perhaps most challenging takeaways for me has been the importance of, taking full responsibility for our own lives. It's easy to blame external circumstances or other people for our unhappiness, but ultimately we have the power to choose our thoughts, our actions, and our responses to the world around us.
That's a powerful reminder. It's not about denying the challenges we face, but about recognizing that we have, more agency than we often realize.
Exactly. And it's not about becoming some kind of like superhuman who never experiences negative emotions or setbacks. It's about learning to navigate those challenges with grace, resilience, and a commitment to personal growth.
Another practical takeaway that has really resonated with me is the importance of cultivating self-compassion. We tend to be so hard on ourselves, but the book reminds us that we deserve kindness and understanding, even when we, make mistakes or fall short of our expectations.
That's such an important point. Self-compassion is not about, letting ourselves off the hook or making excuses. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a loved one.
It's about recognizing that, that we're all works in progress,
Yeah.
that we're all learning and growing, and that it's okay to not be perfect.
Exactly. And the book offers some really practical tips for cultivating self-compassion, from, practicing mindfulness to reframing negative thoughts to simply engaging in activities that bring us joy and nourish our souls.
This book is truly a gift to anyone who is committed to personal growth and living a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
I couldn't agree more. It's a reminder that we have the power to create the reality we desire. One thought, one choice, one action at a time.
So to our listeners out there, we encourage you to dive into You Become What You Think and discover the transformative wisdom that it holds within its pages. Remember, you are the architect of your own life. And with the right tools and mindset, you can create a reality that is both fulfilling and truly your own.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing. Happy reading.